Team Trump is firing back at Arlington National Cemetery over a rather crass photo op. Chris Graham here for Augusta Free Press. An Arlington National Cemetery employee was verbally and physically assaulted on Monday while trying to block a Donald Trump campaign photo op. And the Trump campaign's response, not surprisingly, is to claim that the employee trying to enforce federal law is mentally ill. Diving into this story, here's a quote from a Trump campaign spokesperson, Stephen Chung. The fact is that a private photographer was permitted on the premises, and for whatever reason, an unnamed individual, clearly suffering from a mental health episode, decided to physically block members of President Trump's team during a very solemn ceremony. Okay, let's break this one down. Private photographer permitted on the premises, not under the purposes of federal law regarding campaign activity. Using Chung's phrasing, the fact is that, quote, federal law prohibits political campaign or election related activities within Army National Military cemeteries, and to include photographers, content creators, or any other persons attending for purposes or in direct support of a partisan political candidate's campaign. That's from a spokesperson for Arlington National Cemetery. The spokesperson confirmed that there was, quote, an incident and a report was filed concerning the matter, which stems from an effort by Trump to politicize the third anniversary of 13 service members being killed in a suicide bomb attack in Afghanistan as U.S. forces were withdrawing from Kabul. Now, diving more into this story because there's got to be more to this story, and we got to be able to tell more to this story than just a photo op gone awry. The ex-president has tried to blame the Kabul incident entirely on the actions of the Biden-Harris administration, of course, and he's making it a campaign issue. But to borrow again from Chung's phrasing, the fact is a 2023 State Department report excoriated both Biden and Trump, concluding that, quote, the decisions of both President Trump and President Biden to end the U.S. military mission in Afghanistan had serious consequences for the viability of the Afghan government and its security. Continuing a quote from that, even prior to the signing of the February 2020 U.S. Taliban agreement, President Trump had signaled his desire to end the U.S. military presence in Afghanistan, and he steadily withdrew U.S. forces following that agreement. Continuing the quote from that report, when the Trump administration left office, key questions remain unanswered about how the United States would be able to meet the May 2021 deadline set in the agreement for a full military withdrawal. So let's dive behind the scenes even further than that. So that's what the State Department report in 2023 had to say. Now, after the failed January 6th insurrection, Trump completed his administration's drawdown of U.S. troops in Afghanistan, leaving just 2,500 military personnel in the country. That was the lowest level of U.S. military troops in Afghanistan since the beginning of the war there in 2001. He did this in spite of warnings from congressional Republicans, including Senate Intelligence Committee's ranking Republican Marco Rubio, who you may remember from being on the vice presidential shortlist here a few weeks ago. They warned that the drawdown would lead to a, quote, Saigon type situation. Now, the situation that was forewarned was no doubt aided by a key win for the Taliban in that 2020 agreement that was negotiated by the Trump administration, the release of 5,000 Taliban fighters who had been held by the U.S.-backed Taliban or the Afghan government. Now, think about this. As part of the agreement in which basically Trump agreed to draw down U.S. troops by a set deadline, Trump agreed to release 5,000 Taliban fighters. Amrullah Saleh, then Afghanistan's first vice president, told the BBC in January 2021 that Afghan leaders had told Trump officials that, quote, violence will spike with the release of the prisoners, and that as Trump completed his drawdown, indeed, quote, violence has spiked, Salah said at the time. Now, this is what Trump had to say about the whole matter after the photo op on Monday. Quote, calls by Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, the humiliation in Afghanistan set off the collapse of American credibility and respect all around the world. He's taking no responsibility. Of course, he's not taking responsibility for his agreement to free 5,000 Taliban fighters, his agreement to draw down troops by a set deadline that did not take into any consideration readiness of the military, and using then the photo op, using taking a picture at the graves of soldiers who died in that suicide blast to further his campaign. Um, at a Michigan rally, and this is continuing quotes from the Michigan rally. The voters are going to fire Kamala and Joe on November 5th, we hope. And when I take office, we will ask for the resignations of every single official. Continuing the quote from the rally, we'll get the resignations of every single senior official who touched the Afghanistan calamity to be on my desk at noon on Inauguration Day. You know, you have to fire people. You have to fire people when they do a bad job. That's what Trump had to say after the photo op. You could say that firing people is what 81 million voters did in 2020. But that's getting away from the story at hand, which involves a rather aggressive photo op that was conducted in obvious violation of federal law. Here's a quote from a Democrat from California, Congressman Ted Lieu. The hallowed grounds of Arlington National Cemetery are the final resting place of our American heroes. Trump defiled Arlington National Cemetery by doing a crass campaign stunt over the grave of a dead hero, and his campaign staff acted like bullies. That about sums it up. If you have any questions for me, comments, of course, feel free to comment on the YouTube page. I had a lot of comments on video we did yesterday on another Trump matter. And it's okay if you're a MAGA and you want to comment. Continue to watch the videos and have fun. But if you want to get in touch with me at Augusta Free Press, please feel free to do so at chris@augustafreepress.com.